Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and I have a passion for empowering others to take responsibility for their careers. Yes, I've written several books on owning your career and am loving hosting this podcast. This podcast is for you if you're willing to make a shift to the driver's seat in your career. We feature leaders who inspire, empower, and motivate you for consistent career action for results. Please continue to join us every Sunday when a new episode is released. Let's get into this week's show. Welcome to season 9 of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm excited. I hope you are too. This is Simone Morris returning for another exciting season, and we have amazing guests for you this season, and we are starting off strong. I am delighted for today's guest on the podcast. Her name is Charmin Smith, and she is the head coach of California women's basketball team. She's a mainstay on the Golden Bear bench for over a decade and has been the head coach since 2019. She became the 10th head coach in California women's basketball history after spending 12 seasons as an assistant on the Golden Bear staff, including serving as the program's associate head coach since 2012. She's had 10 20-win seasons and made 9 trips to the NCAA tournament since her arrival at Berkeley back in 2007. I am super delighted to welcome to the podcast Charmin Smith. Hi, Charmin. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really great to be here and happy to have this conversation with you.
Awesome. Well, you and I met a couple months ago at a Juneteenth event, and I was so delighted to hear your story and inspired. I think inspired is a better word, just inspired about your journey. So can you tell our audience a little bit about what you currently do? What's your day like?
Well, days are crazy right now. I'm actually a women's basketball coach at the University of California, Berkeley, which is currently a Pac-12 institution. And I think a lot of people may think that coaching is, show up for practice for a couple hours and then have games, but there's so much that goes into this profession in trying to, develop young women into the best version of their authentic self, which is essentially what I think my job is, not just, wins and losses. So it's a grind every day, but it's one that I enjoy and one that I love, and really feel extremely honored to have this role.
That's awesome. So many thoughts are in my head. Like I watch All American on Netflix. I don't know if you've ever watched it. It's a coaching show as well. But you said so many important things. One is really authentic self, coaching, girls to be their best self. So where did the desire for that come from?
Yeah, it took me a while to get there. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and neither of my parents went to college, and they did all that they could to help my brother and I really have the best opportunities, for us, and they emphasize academics. And so in that type of household, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be an engineer. Like those were the professions that were going to make my family proud, so to speak. And so it took me some time to understand the importance of a coach in someone's life. And when you talk about young people and as they get older, the people that are most influential after their parents oftentimes is a coach. And so just realizing that this too matters. And this is really special, and having the chance to impact lives it's really important.
So did you start off on the direction of one of those professions and then your coach turned you around, or how did it happen?
Yeah, so I, being the nerd that I was and still am, basketball was really just a means for me to get the best education possible. That's how I saw it. At that time, there's no WNBA, and I wasn't really interested in playing overseas. So what I wanted was to go to school somewhere where I could compete at the highest level on the basketball court and earn the best degree possible. And I thought the best opportunity for me with that criteria was Stanford. And so I attended Stanford University. I majored in civil and environmental engineering, and I was going to build bridges. And let's see, my junior year is when my college coach, Tara Vanderveer, took a sabbatical and went to coach the 96 US Olympic team. And there's actually a documentary right now called Dream On that highlights this year and their journey to the gold medal. And that is what really sparked the WNBA. The success of that team gave David Stern the confidence to start the WNBA. So I'm in my last year of college then, and I was like, wait a minute, you mean I don't have to go overseas to play professionally? Like I get paid to play basketball right here. So, that shifted my mindset a bit. And after I graduated, the nerd still had a hold of me, that part of me. So I went back to Stanford and got my master's. But the WNBA is in the summer. So it took me a couple years to earn a spot in the league. I was more of a role player than like, a star. So I earned a spot. I played 3 years in the league and got my master's in civil and environmental engineering during that time, and was still set on building bridges, or now I've shifted to like, urban planning and, helping with the development of mixed use properties and low income, neighborhoods. And still that's where I was until I got cut from the WNBA. I was with the Seattle Storm, and they drafted this player. Some may know her name, Sue Bird. And, I was a tall point guard, and Sue Bird came in, and there was no longer a spot for me. So at that point, I headed back to Stanford, really not knowing what I was going to do. I just wanted to play basketball. And, my college coach says, well, Charmin, you should really consider coaching. I'm like, no, like, I'm not you. That's not what I want to do. That's never been the plan. And I've fought it for some time, and I was actually on a job interview for an engineering position, a great opportunity. And in that job interview, I was sweating, nauseous, dizzy, shaking, like, get me out of here. I wasn't ready to let go of basketball. I just couldn't do it. And so, my coach made a call at the time. There was an opening at Boston College. And I believe that was the fall of 2003. And that was my first year as an assistant coach. And I've been coaching now for 19 seasons, I guess. And it has not let go of me. And what I like to say is that I'm still building bridges in terms of like, the relationships and the connections and the mentorship of these young women that I have the opportunity to coach.
That's so awesome. I've got 2 questions for you. What was happening in the background with your parents? Because you said you grew up in the house that had that vision of these different positions, and here you are going after your path. But you've gone the route of getting the degrees, getting the masters, and going down that route, and now you pivot to embrace your passion. What was happening from a family standpoint?
Yeah, my parents were always really supportive of whatever it is that I wanted to do. I think that was more like self-imposed, like, oh, I was just a big nerd, but they didn't care as long as I was getting good grades and not getting into trouble. They never pushed me into any direction. It was just like my own, self-motivation, like I'm going to be an engineer, so they were extremely supportive and love supporting the teams that I've coached. And, I think they're proud of what I am doing for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. And so then the other question is saying yes to opportunity and listening to your body, because you had a visceral reaction to this is not for me. But sometimes some of us audience, we get those cues, whether it's a manager or whatever the situation is, and we still proceed down that direction. But you listened to your visceral reaction and you said yes, because the other thing is embracing risk. You said yes to go from California to Boston. So talk to us about mind space and what prompted you to say yes and to go for it.
Yeah, well, at that point, it was the opportunity that I had that allowed me to stay connected to my passion. You know, I wasn't able to compete in the WNBA anymore. I just my knees were bad and I couldn't play at that level anymore. And this was the best coaching opportunity out there. And so I think it was just not wanting to let go of my passion that I was comfortable making that huge move, and taking the risk in being an assistant coach.
Awesome. The other thing I heard was sponsorship. How important is it to have sponsorship? So, you talk about your coach, sort of bridging. I like the word bridge because you've got the bridge background and you are a bridge, and also your sponsor made a bridge for you to make
Mhm.
that happen. How important is sponsorship to us, or was it to you in your career?
Yeah, I think I've even realized more as a head coach now that you need people in your corner. You need people advocating for you. You need people who are willing to tell you the truth.
Mm.
Um, and you need people that are, willing to make that phone call for you. All of those things are extremely important and become very helpful at different points in your career as you try to get to where you're trying to go. My college coach, it's funny because now we're competitors, right? She's still the coach at Stanford and I coach at Cal. But I know that except for the day that we're playing each other, she still has my back and is wishing the best for me, and I feel the same way. And sometimes it's allowing yourself to be vulnerable so that you can hear these voices and have those people that are willing to advocate for you and sponsor it, as you mentioned. But it is very important.
Mm, mm. Well, let's get to the formula. This show is about being in the driver's seat for your career. So it sounds like your path was pretty clear. Would you say that well, first of all, when did you realize you were in the driver's seat for your career?
I guess, I thought I was in the driver's seat all along, because I'm getting my undergraduate degree from Stanford, and then I'm going to get my master's degree, and then I'm going to have a job, right? Like you're in control, you're doing these things. I think when I got cut from the league and couldn't do exactly what I wanted to do is when I lost control or wasn't in the driver's seat. And that period was really scary. And it wasn't until I took the risk and took that job at Boston College that I feel like I was back in the driver's seat. And
Mm.
we're going down a completely different road, right? But I'm back driving and like, okay, let's feel this out. And it's taken me this far. It's been 19 years of driving this path
Oh, that's
as a
awesome.
coach, and something I never anticipated.
So what do you say to the students that you coach about perhaps advice for being in the driver's seat or being thoughtful about your career path?
Yeah, I think you do have to follow your passion, and I do know that there's an amount of privilege that can be included in that at sometimes, right? Like sometimes you got to pay the bills,
Mm.
and sometimes passion doesn't pay the bills.
Mm.
So, I realized that, I was on a basketball scholarship, I had fellowships for graduate school, so I could make those choices. So I do recognize that sometimes it's not that easy. But I also remember going overseas to play in Sweden with $47 in my bank account. Like I was like, this is what I'm gonna do, and I gotta figure it out. You know, so it, if you can, right, if you can hold on to that passion, I really think you should for as long as you can, because work is no fun. Like if you gotta work every day, then I think that makes for a long career. But if you can make your job to where you don't feel like work, you don't feel like it's work all the time, then for me that's a definition of success and fortune, right? Not everyone can have that, but that's what I'm striving for, and that's what I want for these young women that I coach, is that they can find something where they wake up every day feeling excited about it and having the courage to take risks to get themselves there.
What a wonderful story. So speaking of success, what do you think, you've been Boston, California to Boston back. What are the key ingredients to successfully own your career, or what's your formula for owning your career?
Well, I know for a fact I'm still trying to figure that out. I was extremely successful as an assistant coach. I think I've helped to build programs and take programs to we here at Cal, we went to a Final Four and had a Pac-12 championship for the first time in program history. At Boston College, we won the Big East tournament and upset Gino's and Diana Taurasi's UConn Huskies there.
Oh,
So
I'm a UConn alumni. Wait a minute.
yeah,
Just kidding.
yeah, yeah. Diana's senior year, she did not win the Big East tournament. She lost to the Boston College Eagles. It was amazing. And we went on to the Sweet 16. So I've been a part of some really special teams as an assistant, as a head coach. If you would have told me I was going to take a head coaching position the year before a global pandemic and the social injustice that's happened or been revealed, and NIL, name, image, and likeness issues, conference realignment, and everything that's happening right now in our country, I would have said, well, I'm not so sure. It has been extremely challenging. And so I'm still trying to get a hold of this and get to where I can say we are having success when it comes to wins and losses. Now, there are a number of ways in which I feel like I'm killing it as a head coach. My team has the highest GPA of any basketball team that's been here. We've raised significant amount of money for our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging department through our Race for Change that we're now doing annually. Our program has started the Raising the Bar Invitational, with the bar standing for basketball, activism, and representation, which is a tournament that features 4 Black female head coaches every year. And I've had 2 players on our team that, after the murder of George Floyd, started the Racial Justice Council here for our student athletes. And so there are a lot of success stories that are coming from this program. And I'm really excited about this season because I think we're finally healthy. I think we finally have the right pieces, and hopefully COVID and other things will stay out of our way to allow us to reach our full potential on the court and get the wins that I know we're capable of.
It's so inspiring. I love it. What about resources? You said you're still figuring it out. What resources over your career have been helpful to you in leveling up, stepping into this head coach role? I don't know what's next after that.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest resource for me is my experience as a player, playing for one of the greatest coaches to ever coach the game, men or women's basketball. I think I know basketball, and that college experience taught me how to be a competitor, how to fight through adversity. As I mentioned, I was not the star player on the team. I was a role player. I averaged 3 points a game as a senior, maybe, I think, right? No one thought I was going to the WNBA. No one thought I could make it into the WNBA. But because of how I trained with my teammates, right, I knew how to compete. And there are a lot of all conference players from different programs that when they got into a WNBA training camp, they didn't know how to act if they weren't the best one on the floor. And so that was something that, a place where I could excel. Give me a role and I can do that role. I don't need to shoot every single time. But if you tell me be a defensive stopper and not let her score, I got that covered, right? And so I found my place. I found, a spot for me to carve out a niche to what I could do and being successful. And I think that's because of the experiences that I've had. Currently, the resources are colleagues, peers that I respect, and peers that are doing it the right way. There's a lot of shadiness going on in collegiate athletics, and I will not compromise my values or my integrity to get a player, get a win, or any of that. So finding like-minded, like-valued people to have the tough conversations with and to learn from and to grow from is really important, because being a head coach is definitely a very lonely profession. It's tough at times, and you need to be able to pick up the phone and talk to someone who sat in that chair and understands what you're going through.
So awesome. Well, I think I may need to go back to some education. First of all, let's go back to the beginning. Okay. What is a Pac-12 house?
Okay. So the Pac-12 conference is a Power 5 conference, and the NCAA is made up of, I don't know, maybe 30 conferences or so. And so the Pac-12 had 12 teams up until a month ago. It's Stanford, Cal, UCLA, USC, Oregon, Oregon State, Arizona, Arizona State, Washington, Washington State, Utah, Colorado. May have left someone out, but 12 schools. And that's like who we play during our conference schedule, right? USC and UCLA just bolted to the Big Ten for, probably like $100 million a year. And with everything that's going on in the NCAA, this type of thing is happening a lot right now, where schools are trying to make money moves and media rights moves to acquire basically more cash for their institutions. And this is the world we live in right now. But yes, being a part of the Pac-12 is the conference in which we play in and the teams that we compete against for that regular season title.
All right. My homework is to watch some more basketball. I don't know if you know this, Charmin, but I am 6 feet tall. And I have been asked almost every day of my life if I play basketball. And judging on that question I just asked you, you know the answer to that. So I like what you said about scoring 3 points, because I think it's important for people to know that there can be adversity and they can still win. Can you give us some tips on how to compete? Because that stuck with me, what you said. I know how to compete.
Yeah. There are a few things that coaches have said to me that it's like, you either dish it out or you take it. Which one are you going to do? Right? Brian Agler, a great coach in our women's game. Like, you got a decision to make. And, are you going to kill the workout or let the workout kill you? Right? And these are the choices that we make as athletes, because it's hard. You can't breathe. Your muscles are burning. You're tired. Right? But you have to push through those things if you want to develop into a great athlete. And I think one of the things I pride myself on right now is that I never ask any of my players to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. Don't tell me you can't major in engineering and go to a high academic institution. Don't tell me that you can't be happy, if you have to spend your first 2 years on the bench and figure out what your role is, right? Don't tell me you can't, handle the pressure of having to make a big shot, right, when it is your turn to do something. All of these things I've experienced, and I know that I can say, hey, you want to be ready for it. This is how you need to prepare. This is what you need to do. And then there's some of them like this, that thumper, that dog, like, when you think about whatever it is, that causes like a lot of hard work or something in what you do. You think about, who would you want in your foxhole, so to speak, if you're going to battle, and whatever that battle may be, right? As an accountant, like, who you trust with the numbers the most or whatever, right? Who do you want in your foxhole on the basketball court? That's the most competitive people. And my goal was always to have my teammates say, yeah, I want Charmin in my foxhole. But that means you got to bring it every day with no excuses.
I don't know. I'm scared. No wonder you have an amazing team. Oh my goodness. That's wonderful. There is a assuredness or a confidence that you have. I wonder, where did that come from? I know you talked about the influence of your coach. Is there other places where it just cemented who you are, because you come across very strong in your belief, your legacy, and just an impactful coach?
Well, thank you for that. I think it all has to do with finding the right thing to do, right? Like if you were asking me questions that I wasn't passionate about, I wouldn't be as confident. Right. But it's like, this is my thing. This is what I feel. This is what wakes me up every day and keeps me motivated. So it allows you to be confident. And I will say, like, as a head coach, there are a lot of days where, whew, I'm struggling, you know. And when we talk about, you know, as Black females, like trying to get over this imposter syndrome, like this position that I have, it's heavy. It's heavy. And the obligation that I feel to be successful, because people who look like me don't really get a second chance at a position like this, you know. So there's the pressure. There are the days where you know, uncertainty creeps in. But at the end of the day, I know that I know this game. I know that I care about my student athletes, and I know that I am operating in an ethical and moral way and trying to treat people the right way. And I'm going to do it my way. And if something happens where I'm not successful, well, then I have nothing to hang my head on, because I have, you know, done it how I wanted to do it. And I've been my, you know, true authentic self throughout the whole process.
Mm-hmm. What would, if you wrote a book on your career body of work, what would the title be?
Ooh, I don't know. That's tough. A book. Wow. Go for it. I don't know. If you ask me 5 minutes from now, I might have something different. But that's
what should I name this episode? What should I name this episode?
Yeah.
What is the underlying message throughout your career?
Yeah. You know, I talk a lot about developing into the best version of your authentic self. That is extremely important to me. And I've had a lot of student athletes with, you know, different backgrounds, different issues, different levels of confidence, different experiences. And I just want them to be them. You know, I don't want them to try to be me, to try to be their mom, try to be their dad, whatever. Like, they need to be the best version of themselves. And that's really the space that I want to create for them. Right. Oh, you're into this? That's cool. Just do it well, though. Right. Oh, you want to do this? Okay, that's great. But don't take shortcuts. Like, do it to the best of your ability, and operate with integrity. You know, we talk about our core values. We have the circle represents our core values. That's connection, because this is a sisterhood, a sorority of sorts. And once you are there, we like to try to keep that circle, don't break the circle, and stay connected. We talk about integrity, which is doing things the right way, even when no one's watching, right? We talk about being resilient. It's just who we are. We've been fighting through so much, particularly with COVID. We just have to keep fighting. We talk about leadership, which isn't necessarily like telling your teammate what to do, but it's making sure your teammate has what they need. Your teammate on your left, teammate on the right, like taking care of each other from a leadership standpoint. And then the final letter in the circle is embracing improvement, like trying to consistently improve and embracing the grind and not shying away from it, but accepting it and welcoming it. So I think that's a little bit more of like how I'm aligned and what I'm trying to pour into this program when it comes to who we want to be.
It sounds like a formula, the circle formula.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that something you created?
Yes. Yeah.
So that may end up in a book one day.
Maybe. Right? This book thing is a little intimidating for me. You know, like, I'm an engineer, you know, like I like problem sets. I don't want to write papers. I don't want to, you know, I'm more like the problem set and the labs and things like that. But yeah, it sounds cool.
So it sounds like the passion for engineering and building bridges has not left you.
No, not at all. That's why I like being here in the Bay Area. You know, the Bay Bridge is beautiful. You got the Golden Gate. Like, no, I'm still captivated by bridges. And you know, I've had a couple players who, I've tried to do some of their calculus work and tried to stay, up on the math. It's really changed. I'm like, that's not math, but, I do still enjoy it, and I'm definitely still a nerd.
Awesome. Awesome. I've heard you say that a couple of times. I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd. How does that play out?
Um, I don't know, like nerds are really cool, right? It's a movie about them, but it just means that I like have a passion for learning, and it's fun for me. I enjoy it, like school, um, and the basketball court are my two favorite places to be. I'd be in a classroom or on the court. So I think that's that. I'm an athlete and also a nerd.
Mm, awesome. Well, it's been so delightful to have you on the podcast. If our listeners want to connect with you, is there a way that they can do so?
For sure. I'm on social media. Twitter and Instagram is 21 Charmin. So the number 2, the number 1, and then Charmin, CHARMIN. And my email is charminsmith@berkeley.edu. You got to know how to spell Berkeley. There's an extra E in there. BERKELEY.
All right. You tell them. It's been such an honor to have you sharing your career journey. Any parting words as we wrap up the interview?
No, I just want to thank you for allowing me to have this time. It's been really great, and hopefully we can stay connected as well. I appreciate it.
All right, you may recruit me. No, just kidding. Just kidding for sure. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast, Charmin Smith. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this week's empowering career story on the podcast. If you did, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Wherever you listen to the podcast, be sure that you are subscribing and that you rate and review the podcast. It's so important as we continue to spread the word of career empowerment. In addition, you can head over to the LinkedIn platform and join the Power of Owning Your Career discussion group. There you can have access to the guests who have been on the podcast, as well as others listening to the podcast, as well as myself, where we can continue the conversation. I hope to see you on that platform. You can also email me at pooyc@simonemorris.com if you have a suggestion for guest or a message that you want me to hear personally. Thanks so much, and make it an inspiring, empowering week in your career.